Hello, my name is Kate Hudson Horn. Thank you for listening to Bulimia Sucks, because it does. This is a platform for people to share relatable and uplifting and inspiring conversations based on bulimia and anorexia and other eating disorders. And episodes include personal stories of where they are now and their difficult journeys and their steps taken into recovery. And then we also talk to professionals who work with people with eating disorders. Now, my audiobook is now live, which is very exciting. It's on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. And if you would be interested and would like a free copy of this, then please email me at katehudsonhall@gmail.com, and then I can just send you the code, so then you can download it for free and check it out. And also the Bulimia Sucks digital pack is now live, up and out into the world. So this is, it contains practical tools to help people begin to break those difficult patterns of their eating disorder. So what's included is the whole of the Bulimia Sucks course, which incorporates teaching videos, tables, and tools, a PDF copy of the book Bulimia Sucks, a dynamic Bulimia Sucks hypnosis MP3 recording to help to work with your unconscious behaviors, and a family and friends support ebook download. And there is also a relaxation hypnosis recording, which is only a 20-minute recording. So you can listen to that anytime maybe that you're feeling tense or anxious. And also access to the private Facebook group for ongoing support. And then regular Facebook Live Q&A sessions with myself. So if you would be interested to find out more, if you go to bulimiasucks.com, all the information is in there, or to katehudson-hall.com. We've got the information there too. Now, it is very exciting for me. We have our guest today is Lindsay Davis. Now, Lindsay Davis, where did that come from? Leslie Davis. Oh, good Lord. She has been on the podcast before, Leslie Davis, in episode 35 to talk about her journey with her connection with food. Now, Leslie is also the author of now 4 books. Now, one of her books is called You Can't Eat Love: How Learning to Love Yourself Can Change Your Relationship with Food. Because Leslie was once a professional yo-yo dieter, going from phases of binging and purging to not eating anything. And then on to that fantastic miracle liquid protein diet, which funnily enough didn't work. And in her inspiring book, she shares her journey and the multiple lessons she's learned. It is a fascinating book, and I highly recommend it for people that want to learn from others that have been through that journey. It is an excellent 5-star book. So I'm very excited to welcome Leslie Davis. Hello, Leslie.
Well, hello, Kate. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think I'm looking forward to it even more than the last conversation that we had.
Oh, gosh. Now, the reason that Leslie, well, one of the reasons that Leslie has come back to join us is because today we are reversing the roles and just shaking it all up a bit, because Leslie is going to be asking me about my journey with my eating disorder and also my book. So thank you, Leslie, for joining us. And it's very kind of you to to give your time to coming and talking to me.
Well, I enjoy listening to your podcast all the time, and having read your book and listened to your audiobook, I kept thinking, well, when is somebody going to ask her about her book? Because you're always asking other people about, what they know, what they've done, their suggestions. And I know that you have so much information that you can share with people. So what better way than for me to hijack your podcast and
hijacker,
get you to talk about your book. So I really appreciate you letting me do this. And
yeah, no, this will be great. Thank you so much.
Well, and your listeners will learn so much about what you are all about. And also, I hope that your listeners will be even more inspired to get your books, and that is S after book, plural books, because you do have quite a few books that they may not be aware of.
Yes,
so thank you.
No, thank you. Now, where would you like to start?
Well, I would like to start where I always start with myself, and that is
with a funny story.
But yes, and so what is your funny story that you want to share with us?
Oh, well, gosh. This is a good question, as people always say. Well, a funny story, because I'm so old, I have quite a few funny stories.
You're not old. You are not old. You're not over 100, so you're not old.
Oh, okay, good. That sounds good to me. So I was just thinking, well, how do you know? I could be 99 3/4. Now, hang on a minute.
But that's not over 100. But that's still not over 100, so you're still not old. In which case, you're extremely well preserved. So we will change the talk from your book to your miracle ageless regime.
Yeah, the dinosaur look. Now, my funny story. So let me begin by, when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I used to work, well, for a short time, I worked in a private nightclub, and it was in Knightsbridge. Now, for people that don't know, Knightsbridge is where Harrods is based, the shop Harrods. And it was very close also to Kensington. And it was a beautiful club. It wasn't very big, but it was in Knightsbridge, in between Knightsbridge actually and Hyde Park. So it had been there for a long time, and it was a fantastic building. And I was working as a cashier and a receptionist. And the reception was sort of on the ground floor, on the first floor. And behind the reception was this most spectacular old restaurant with these big glass paneled windows. And it was all very gorgeous, delightful it was. And so when people were sitting in the restaurant, they could see out into the reception. And so I was working there, and they had a launch of this club, and it was called the Wellington Club. And they were having a relaunch of the club, and somebody had bought it. And there would be all sorts of people that would come to this prestigious club. And in this particular night, they were having the launch, and there was quite a few well-known faces at this launch. And I would be at reception doing my cashiering and tottering back and forth. And if you were sitting in the restaurant, you could sort of see us at the reception, and there was a doorman as well. And I, at the end of the evening, I was standing by the door, and this man came out from the restaurant, and he came sort of like bouncing out, and he said, "Oh," and so the doorman ran off to get his coat. And this chap came up to me, and he was like, "Oh, thank you. I've had such a lovely evening. It's been so spectacular." And then took my head in both hands and then went to kiss me on the lips. And I'm like, what? And I luckily turned my face away. And I thought, I can't believe this. And luckily then the doorman came back, and I was like, I was only in my 20s, and I was just, it was completely quite inappropriate. And do you know who it was? Although
Winston
for some
Churchill.
people, for young people, they probably won't know who he is. But it was Omar Sharif.
No way.
It was.
No way.
And I phoned my mother the next day going, you never guess who tried to kiss me last night? She fell off her chair.
I am almost falling off of my chair. Oh my gosh. Dr. Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia.
Yes.
Omar.
Oh, he was an
he
Egyptian
stole my heart.
actor. Yeah. He was a little older than but it was quite funny. It was like, oh, Omar Sharif tried to kiss me. Lucky turn my lips away.
But then you would never be able to, kiss another person after kissing Omar Sharif. So, I mean, how can you top that? So it's a good thing that you turned your face, because, it would be all over with. You'd have to, get yourself to a nunnery.
Resign myself.
But what a fabulous story.
That was quite entertaining.
Oh my gosh, what a fabulous story. So I'm just curious. I know that you're a therapist and you work with people who have eating disorders. And now I'm trying to get my mind off the fact that you were kissed by Omar Sharif.
Gorgeous Omar Sharif.
Yes. I see a binge of Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia in my horizon. But anyway, you're a therapist and you work with people who have eating disorders. And I'm just curious, what was it that motivated you to go down that path to help people with eating disorders?
What motivated me? I think that's a very good question, because I have been working as a psychotherapist for the last 22 years. And I think it was always my goal to work with people with eating disorders, because I know from a deeper level what they're going through. And I was in such a bad place when I had it that it was a real passion for me to be able to help other people with an eating disorder, to be able to help them through what I understand they're going through and help them to begin to change their patterns and behaviors.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is that you also suffered from an eating disorder, and probably during the time that you were getting professional help, you felt that there was something missing in that.
It was at the time. It was at the time when Omar Sharif kissed me. It was at that period. I had an eating disorder for 15 years. So it did go on for a long time.
And during that time, what were you looking for? And I guess
with regards to help.
It was with regard to help, but also with regard to there's probably, I don't know about you, but I know for me, I was looking for something on the outside to fill up something I didn't understand on the inside. So
when you were looking for what, the type of therapist or the help, or
the type of help, the type of somebody who could get through to me to help me understand what I could do.
Yeah. And I think that that's really important, because it's finding that right person that you feel comfortable with, that you feel at ease with, to open up with. Because I went through a number of different therapists over the years. And it wasn't until probably the fourth therapist that I had that I really connected with her. And she was a real saving grace in my life and helped me through.
So what do you think she did differently that the other ones didn't do?
what did she do differently? She was a psychotherapist, so it was more about getting down to the root cause of specifically what was going on with my eating disorder. Yeah. And she practiced a number of different therapies as well. She was very spiritual as well. And, I think it was that we connected on a deeper level. Even
so
though,
getting down to that root cause, I can just imagine that had to have been difficult for you.
yeah, so that took me,
have that level of trust in her,
yeah,
to be able to get to that root cause.
So I was seeing her for 4+ years, and I do believe that when I was seeing her, my mother found out she had cancer. And because I didn't have a father, he died when I was 2. So it was a mother and father wrapped in one. And she was such a support for me. And my mother had cancer for 2 years, but then suddenly died. And it was the most traumatic time in my life. And I do believe that if I wasn't seeing that therapist, I wouldn't be here today.
Well, I can just imagine, losing your mother that suddenly, because if you lost your father when you were 2, that was a grief that you never really had the ability to experience. He simply vanished from your life and you weren't able to process that. So you probably carried that wound forward. And then, you're confronted with your mother, and then she suddenly dies. I can only imagine how incredibly devastating that had to have been. It had to have absolutely rocked your world totally.
It did. And I had my oldest son, he was only 4 months old.
That's even more difficult.
Yeah, it was a very, very difficult time. And plus we'd had many deaths in the family before this.
So you were kind of on a spiral that was wrapping itself, and you didn't really understand how to take care of yourself, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, and at that time, I had been doing very well with my eating disorder because it was my mother that dragged me to see the doctor initially, and sort of got the ball rolling. And at that time, she was a real support for me, and I would speak to her every day as I went through recovery. And then I had some other difficulties that happened, and then I would kind of fall off the wagon, so to speak. And of course, when she died, I slipped back into my bulimic behaviors.
Well, you lost your safety net.
Yeah, for a time, until I sort of woke up and thought, oh, what would she be thinking? If she could see me now. And then I managed to get myself back on track. But because I had already been on that positive path for a number of, working through it over a couple of years, it was easier. It gets easier every time when you have a slip up to get back on your path.
And don't you think that that's really important to understand, that just because you slip off doesn't mean that you can't get back on?
Oh, absolutely. And I think what's really important is that it's okay to the fact that you have slipped off, and to be aware of how you are thinking and how you are talking to yourself, because that will be heightened the negative voice that you have in your head that will spend much of its time giving you a very difficult time.
So how did you learn to recognize that you had slipped off the path, but more importantly, how did you learn how to get yourself back up on the path?
Yes, that's a good question. I think at that time it was because of me thinking about my mother and what how disappointed she would have been in me. And because I had already, from being on the positive path, seen the huge changes and benefits of being on that positive path and not slipping off for a time, and seen the huge changes in my body and the way I felt, that's what invigorated me as well. Plus, I had my young son. So
yeah, I mean, people in our lives can be huge motivators, and you mentioned that you'd also seen the positive aspects of how your life was better when you stayed on the path. So that's really important to acknowledge the positive. But it sounds to me as if you did something that I like to do. You didn't beat yourself up for falling off the path.
yeah, and that's what's really important, is that you can choose whether you listen to that negative voice that beats yourself up, or you can start to really tune in and be aware of that negative voice. And when you do hear it, you could maybe use the thought stopping and shout at that voice, stop, and then tell it to get lost, however you would like to term that phrase. And then give yourself a positive phrase that you could say to yourself. It's okay, I've slipped up, but I am focusing on back on my positive pathway, or something. Or you could just listen to that negative voice and just allow it to beat you up, but it's not going to do you any good whatsoever. So it's having the thought of what you're going to do beforehand. So first of all, to be consciously aware that you're beating yourself up, and then start to use the thought stopping and shout at that negative voice and tell it to stop and to get lost. And the more that you can do that, the quieter the voice will become. And then give yourself, in your own words, write down a good positive phrase that you can learn, that you can keep repeating to yourself. I'm taking the steps to get myself back on my positive pathway, or something like that.
But that sounds like a really, really good plan. And I like the fact that you are suggesting that you plan ahead of time so that you are prepared for when this does happen. And in your book, you do outline exactly this thought stopping.
Yes, it's a fantastic tool just to have in your pocket, because we just spend so much time listening to our negative voice in our head. And we don't need to do that. We don't need to listen to all that negativity all the time.
Well, one of the things that I talk about in You Can't Eat Love is habits, and those thoughts are like the deep ruts in a muddy road. And it's so easy for us to drive down that muddy road in those ruts because, they're very deep. But what you're suggesting is that we make a plan ahead of time when we're calm and when we're quiet, and we start practicing that plan ahead of time, so that when those things do happen, we know that we've got, as you said, that tool to put in our pocket. Are there some other suggestions? I mean, your book, first of all, your book is amazing and it's inspiring and it's easy to read. So I guess really my first question that I had when I was reading it is, why did you write the book? You have an amazing practice. You're helping all kinds of people. You're doing all kinds of things. You're living an amazing life. You've overcome. So why write this book?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I have always had this urge that I wanted to write a book, but I didn't know what I was going to write it about. So I spoke to a cousin of mine, and she has written 7 books now. And I said to her, I want to write a book, but I don't know how to do it. And she said, well, you can talk, so you can write. And I thought, yeah, I can talk. I can talk all right. I don't know how to write, but I can talk. So I decided that I would, to write a book, as if I was talking it. So, but I didn't know what I was going to write it about. It was going to be about my colourful family, which that book is still yet to come. But I thought, well, I'll just start. She said, just start with a memoir and then see what happens. We'll take it from there. So I did that. And then, of course, when I became 18, it became all I was talking about was when I had bulimia. And then the penny dropped. It was like, oh, I know what I can do with all my different techniques and skills is to create the book into a book for people with bulimia. And then, so it's 25% memoir, and then the rest of the 75% is all self-help tips of how I help my clients to overcome bulimia.
But and that's amazing, because I mean, what a journey, where you started out with it was going to be a funny story about your family, then it was going to be a memoir, and then you hit 18 and you're like, wait a minute, this is what I can do. But one of the things that I love about your book is you give your credibility. You essentially, hold out your credentials before you start telling people how they can manage and learn to deal with their own eating disorder. You are not speaking from a place of theory, you're backing it up with theory.
Yes.
Because you lived the experience. And I think that is so relevant and important. And I think that that's one of the reasons why the book resonates with me, is you're coming from that, I lived it. I made all these mistakes. This is everything I did before I figured stuff out, before I got the help. And now I'm going to give you the shortcut so that you don't have to learn from my mistake. You don't have to make your own mistakes. You can learn from mine, and hopefully you'll get on the road a little bit faster. So I think that's one of the reasons I find the book so relatable. And I'm just curious, have you gotten feedback from people who have read the book that are, saying that this has helped? Because I can just imagine how many people you're helping with it.
Yeah, the reviews that I've had have been very positive, and people have found it really helpful to be able to begin to break their difficult behaviors if they hadn't already done so. And also for people that are already on their recovery path, because the tools in there are very simple, but really powerful. And that's what people find is very helpful.
Well, in keeping the tools as simple as you keep the tools makes it easy for a person to learn them in a very short period of time. Yes. But also to anyone who's listening right now, the title of the book and the title of the series may be Bulimia Sucks. But understand this book really applies to all kinds of things that we can be struggling with. It can apply to all kinds of if you're struggling, with emotions, if you're struggling with dysfunction, if you're struggling with all these kinds of things, the tools that are in this book don't specifically apply to bulimia. So if you're looking for something that is uplifting and going to give you a direction to go in when you have no idea what direction to go, I really recommend this. And right now, it is October, and I know that a lot of people are possibly dreading the upcoming holiday season because of the things that it stirs up. If you want some tools in your toolkit to help you to not just survive but thrive during the holiday season, read this book and start practicing these tools so that when you get into those gatherings and those places, you are already prepared, or at least better prepared than you would have been if you did nothing. So I'm just really grateful. And like I said, it may be called Bulimia Sucks, but it applies to a whole lot more than that. So
absolutely. If you've got anxiety, if you've got any eating disorder, the techniques in the book would apply to you.
And what a great, concise, easy way to learn to master those things. Now, you mentioned the audio book. You recorded that yourself, right? So it's your fabulous, amazing British accent that we get to hear
about that.
when we listen to
but
the
I felt really passionate about doing the recording the audiobook myself, because I haven't recorded a book before, funnily enough. And I didn't feel anybody would be able to put that heartfelt passion into the book as I could, which may sound very arrogant, but that's how I feel about it.
Well, in listening to it, it was as if you and I were sitting here on this right now together in the same room, and you're telling me the story, and I could feel, the emotion, and I felt as if I was, in the middle of the experience, but also your calm and soothing voice as you go through the exercises and you explain those things. That was extremely helpful, because I believed that I could, rather than reading the information and thinking, oh, this isn't going to work. It was, and some of the techniques that you present, I had heard of in passing. For example, the tapping, I had heard of in passing, but I had never really understood what it was. And you do such an amazing job explaining stuff. But for me, the fact that you laid your soul bare at the beginning, I was able to accept what you were telling me as you guided me through the technique. So I can just imagine how important it was to you. And I think it was a really great choice to do it in your own voice rather than hire a narrator. So was it difficult doing that recording yourself and reading those words out loud?
No, not at all. No, it was the most difficult part was actually sitting in my little camp that I had to make. I record it, being able to see what I was reading, but also talking about the techniques in the book. There is a link for each technique that would take you to a video of me doing the technique and showing you how to do it. Just a short video.
Well, and that's amazing. I mean, you were providing so much information, to the reader, to the listener, so much information that's just really incredible. And I can only imagine how much value people get from you guiding them. It's as if you're right there in their living room or on their phone, right there guiding them. So I'm just curious, because you were saying that you had this eating disorder for 15 years. And you mentioned your mother, and I imagine there were some other issues that well, I know from reading the book, there were some other issues that came up, that kind of set the stage for this control issue. If you were today to write a letter to the 15-year-old you, what would you want that 15-year-old you to know, so that maybe they didn't go down the path, or if they did go down the path, to let them know what was going to be on the other end?
I would want them to understand how extraordinarily powerful a suggestion can be. That's one of the things that I would say to her, because that's what happened with me. I was concerned about my weight because I'd always been really skinny, and then I was a late developer, and I developed hips, I suppose, and become a bit only slightly more rounder, more shapely. And so I was sitting with a friend of mine, and we had dinner, and we were sitting there talking about our non-existent weight issues. And that is when she said to me, did you know if you were to eat a Mars bar and make yourself sick, then you won't put the weight on? Well, I literally took that and ran with it. But if I had known that maybe I had a specific tool to understand, first of all, knowledge not to pick up that suggestion, and maybe had a tool or two in my pocket that I could detach from stopping myself from picking up that suggestion, and where it would have led me, and what a traumatic time I would have had, that would have been a help. And also I would have said to her, you would really benefit from having a therapist to be able to work through your past experiences when you were sexually abused when you were 8 or 9, and your experience at boarding school, because I had some difficulties there. And that is what I would say to her. I'd say, you need to go and find yourself a good therapist. To start to talk. You need to learn to talk about your feelings. That's what I would say to her. Because we're not taught how to talk about our feelings. And that, for me, was something that I was completely detached from, was my feelings. Because, I don't know, I was even more detached than most people my age at that time. Maybe it was protecting myself somehow, some way, I don't know. But that is what I would say to her. You need to learn to be taught how to tune into your feelings and to be able to channel them positively.
Well, and that's a very powerful statement, because one of the things that I am recognizing recently more and more is the message that we give to children.
Mm-hmm.
If they fall down and they cry, we tell them you're not hurt. If a toy breaks and they're sad because of the loss, we tell them it's okay. If something happens, we shove food at them and tell them, this will make it feel better.
Yeah.
And how expensive is it for us as adults to simply say to a child, well, of course you're hurt. You fell down, you bumped something. Of course you're hurt. Why don't you sit right here with me for just a moment, and when you're ready to go, go on, and let them sit in their sadness, their hurt, instead of being
it away.
told, yes, and really, isn't it us as adults who are trying not to be uncomfortable, who are projecting that onto children?
Yeah, absolutely. And to talk to the children about what they can do that would help them to be able to, first of all, tune into those feelings, and to have the feelings. It's okay to have the feelings, and what they can do to be able to let them go.
So what would you say, just very quickly, if as people are listening, and I'm sure people do have children, what would you say that they could actually do to help their children, so that maybe we can start making some changes in each little person's little corner of the world to help them so that they don't run into an eating disorder later in their life?
Well, I think that the parent needs to listen more to what the child is saying, and take the child to a quiet area and sit and listen to the child. Tell the child that you're hearing that they are very hurt by what somebody has said to them at school. You could ask them what feelings they're having, how are they feeling about that, and you could talk through those feelings with that child and ask them maybe where they have that feeling in their body, and what would they need to do in order to let that feeling go, what works for them, and actually tune into what works for the child, because we're all different.
Well, and that's a great
Give them permission
suggestion.
to let it go.
And that's a great suggestion. Where are you feeling it in your body? That's amazing. And give them permission to let it go.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes all we want to do is be heard, right?
Yes. And that's what we don't do with young children. We don't get down to their level and say, look, I hear what you're saying, and it's okay to be sad about this, whatever's maybe happened.
What great advice, what incredible advice. So you have not only the Bulimia Sucks book, the audio book, you also have, the podcast, the amazing podcast. I suggest everybody subscribe to it. But you also have your workbook that goes along with it, which I highly recommend as well. And recently, have you finished a couple of other books?
So I also have the Bulimia Sucks personal food journal, which is an area where you can write down what you are eating, but it's got a lot of reminders of how you could tune into those thoughts and feelings that you have at times, maybe when you're not feeling very positive. It's got some motivational quotes and some positivity in there to help and guide you through working and writing down what you're eating, to become more aware, but also to see how you're eating at this particular time. And then further down it's a 3-month food journal. So then looking back over the months and seeing how you have changed and what you've learned and what different thoughts and feelings are coming up. But it's a real excellent tool to be able to tune in to not only what you're eating, but also what you're thinking and what you're feeling.
Well, and reflection is so important because as time goes on, we can recognize how our thoughts are changing. And then we can also celebrate how our thoughts have changed, how we started out one way and we discovered, oh, I don't have to think that way anymore. And we can celebrate that moment. But yeah. I thought you also had something else in addition to the food journal.
I am just about to launch a Bulimia Sucks coloring book.
Oh, how exciting.
It's very exciting. So it is 35 pages of mandalas with powerful positive quotes on each of those 35 pages. And then following each quote page is a blank page where you have a question about that quote, how you feel about that quote, what you can learn about that quote, and what you could change after reading that quote. So it's kind of making you think about the quote and what you could learn from it and how it could help you. So I'm very excited about this because a lot of people like to color, and it's also sort of more of a tool to get you thinking about what your patterns are and what you can begin to change to help you forward on your recovery path.
Well, and also it's so important that we be aware of what we're putting into our minds. So spending time coloring that page, you're feeding your mind with that inspirational quote over and over and over again. And I don't know about you, but the more positive things I put into my mind, the quieter my mind can get. And the easier it is to tell that voice that we were talking about shouting at, earlier, telling it to stop. The easier it gets for me to tell that voice to stop because I'm loading my tool belt with these positive affirmations.
Yeah, absolutely. And a positive affirmation is, for people that don't know, a short, simple phrase that you would keep repeating to yourself. So if you were going through the coloring book and you found a quote, an affirmation that you particularly like, if you were to keep repeating that positive phrase to yourself, it's not only working with your conscious mind, but it's also working for that other part of your mind, the subconscious mind. So it's giving it direction about how you want to be in the future. And the more that you can repeat that, the more that part of your mind will think, oh, why do they keep repeating this? Oh, okay. So this is the direction that they want me to go in. Okay, I'll help this person go in that direction. So it's coming from all directions to be able to help you.
Which is amazing. And the act of coloring, sets off
so therapeutic.
Very calming. Much so. And it also lights up our childlike nature.
Yeah.
To want to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just making the cover for the book at the weekend. And on the cover is a mandala. And I'm thinking, well, how am I going to make this beautiful and colorful? So I sat with my granddaughter and we colored it in together. And it was so much fun. We had such a lovely time.
Well, and what a memory you've created too.
Yes. And she will remember that.
Yes, she will. She will.
Oh, I helped to create this this book cover.
And when she sees it on Amazon, she can show her friends and family, you know, look, this is what I did. I did this.
Yeah. She's only 5. But hey.
But she will remember it. She'll remember it. So if you were to be able to meet you in 10 years.
Hang on, I'll be 110.
Not quite, because you're only 99 3/4.
Silly me. My memory of losing.
So if you were to meet you in 10 years, what would you want that you in 10 years to know about you right now that they don't know?
Oh my good Lord. I don't know the answer to what would I want me in 10 years time to do would want to know?
Well, or, you know, to rephrase it, where would you want to be in 10 years from now?
I would want that me in 10 years time to look back and be very proud of what I have achieved and how many people I've helped with my books and the audiobook and the other books and the podcast. That's what I would like. For that me in 10 years time to be so impressed and so proud at how many people I've helped.
And I can see that there's going to be a line of millions of people that you will have helped, because your book is amazing. You are amazing. Everything that you offer to people is amazing. And I just hope that everyone listening, if you haven't gotten the book, get the book. If you know somebody who needs the book, recommend the book.
Yes.
There's all kinds. Go to the website. And what is the best way for people to reach you?
If you go to my website, it's katehudson-hall.com, and all the information is in there.
And lots and lots and lots of videos, so you get to listen to her amazing British accent, and you don't have to listen to any of my "where in the heck is this person from" and "who from Texas doesn't say y'all" accent.
So Leslie, so before we go now, so you came onto the podcast and you were talking about your book, You Can't Eat Love. And I mentioned in the beginning that you have other books, but we haven't actually spoken about your other books. So what are your other books about?
Well, in the You Can't Eat Love series, I've got the workbook, which helps people, you know, expand on, especially on their why. And I've just recently added a supplemental workbook, which is available on the website, You Can't Eat Love. And the supplemental workbook helps people really dig deep to find their why. Because one of the things that I have come to recognize is, regardless of what it is you're trying to pursue, if you're not crystal clear on why, you're probably going to give up on that dream. But especially if you're dealing with trying to lose weight or overcome an eating disorder, if you're trying to do it, you know, for that wedding or to fit into that dress or whatever, those things are going to let you down. So you've got to be true to your why. So I've got a supplemental workbook that helps you with, builds on the workbook work. And then I've got a journal called So I Said to Myself, which has guided prompts to help you have a conversation with your very best friend in the whole wide world, which is yourself.
Oh, my.
Because I think it's really important that we learn that we can trust ourselves and we can have those honest conversations with ourselves. I did have to laugh at myself the other day. I was having not very helpful thoughts, and I was writing in my journal, and I was hedging my bet, so to speak, as to what I was writing. And I was like, no, you got to be true to yourself. Write down what you're really thinking, what you're really feeling, and get it out. You know, you can't cheat yourself. You can't lie to yourself. And so I did, and I felt much better. But I just found it amusing, and I still laugh about it, here I am saying, to people, talk to your very best friend in the whole wide world, tell them everything, and then I'm hedging my bets. I'm like, you can't do that. And then, like you, I've got a fit and food journal so that you can track your exercise and track your food, and it's got all kinds of inspirational quotes and
Amazing.
places for you to establish your own goals and your rewards. And then I'm working on a coloring book. In fact, my supplemental workbook has about 5 coloring pages in it, because I'm recognizing we need to do things that are fun.
Yes.
Everything can't be work. It's got to be fun.
Yeah. And I think the coloring is just so therapeutic, but it's also very calming and relaxing.
It really is. It's very calming and relaxing. And, the colors, because we get to pick the colors. That's the thing that I love about the coloring pages. Nobody is dictating what color goes next to anything else. We get to make our own choices, and to see it come to life is just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. Oh, we look forward to your coloring book now. So if people wanted to find out more, so they would go to youcan'teatlove.com, and all the information is in there.
Right.
And if they wanted to buy the book, they would go on Amazon and type in You Can't Eat Love.
They can go to Amazon and type in You Can't Eat Love, or they can go to my website, youcan'teatlove.com, and the links to different places, including Amazon, to get the book are all there as well.
Yeah. And then we'll have them below anyway, this podcast, so people can find them. So, gosh, well, thank you so much, Leslie. It's so kind of you.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask you about your book, so that your listeners and your readers can learn more about your amazing book and how amazing it is and how it can make a difference in their life.
Yeah. Thank you, Leslie.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And thank you to everybody for listening. And before we go, let us know what you think about the show, and show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, or wherever you listen to it. And make sure you come and join our Facebook group if you haven't done so already. So it's really good to connect with other people and come and talk to us. And if you have any questions, feel free. We're there to help you and support you. So I look forward to speaking with you in the next episode.